If you've been taking vitamins for your nerve pain and you're still suffering, I need you to stop what you're doing and watch this carefully, because there's a very good chance that the vitamins you're combining are actively working against each other. And I don't mean slightly less effective. I mean canceling each other out entirely, or in some cases, making your nerve symptoms measurably worse. I've been working with patients over 60 for decades, and this is one of the most common and most devastating mistakes I see. People doing everything right, taking their supplements, trying to take care of themselves, and still waking up at 3 in the morning with their feet burning like they're on fire. Here's what almost nobody is telling you. 3 specific vitamins, each one genuinely important for nerve health, become problematic when combined the wrong way. The timing, the form, the combination, all of it matters. And most people, most doctors, and most supplement labels get it completely wrong. Stay with me, because what I'm about to walk you through could explain why nothing has worked so far, and what to do instead. Let me start with something that might sound familiar. You've probably heard that vitamin B12 is critical for nerve health, and that's absolutely true. You may have heard that vitamin D matters, also true. You may even be taking calcium alongside your D3. Very common recommendation. But here's where it starts to unravel. Because certain combinations, taken at the same time, in the wrong forms, without the right cofactors, create a biochemical conflict inside your body that your nerves pay the price for. And the research on this is clear, even though it rarely reaches the people sitting in the waiting room. I want you to think about what you're actually feeling. The burning in your feet that gets worse at night when everything is quiet and there's nothing to distract you from it. The tingling that starts in your toes and creeps up toward your ankles. That sensation like your feet are permanently half asleep, no matter how much you move them. The electric shocks, sudden and sharp, that come without warning and make you flinch even when you're sitting still. Maybe you've started holding the wall when you walk down the hallway. Maybe you've caught yourself shuffling instead of stepping because you can't fully feel where your feet are landing. These aren't small inconveniences. These are your nerves sending distress signals, constantly, relentlessly, because something in the support system they need has broken down. In my years working with patients over 60, I've seen this pattern over and over. They come in after months or years of suffering. They're already taking supplements. They're trying. And when I ask them what they're taking and when, almost every time I can identify at least one combination that is actively undermining the others. This is not your fault. Nobody told you this. The bottle doesn't say it. Your doctor, if they mentioned supplements at all, almost certainly didn't explain the timing interactions. So you did what made sense. You took everything together in the morning with breakfast, and your nerves kept suffering. I want you to understand what's actually happening inside your body when this goes wrong. Because once you understand the mechanism, the solution becomes obvious. Think of your peripheral nerves as electrical cables running throughout your entire body. Each one has a protective coating called myelin, similar to the rubber insulation around a power cord. When that insulation is intact, signals travel cleanly. When it breaks down, the signal distorts. You get static. You get interference. That's the burning, the tingling, the numbness. That's the shock sensation. Your body is desperately trying to transmit a signal through damaged wiring. Now, the primary raw material your body needs to maintain and rebuild that myelin coating is vitamin B12, specifically the form called methylcobalamin, not just any B12, the methylated form. And here's what makes this so critical for people over 60. After age 60, your stomach produces significantly less intrinsic factor, the protein required to absorb B12 from food. So even if you're eating well, you may be severely deficient. And if you're taking metformin for blood sugar, the situation is even more serious. Research has consistently shown that metformin blocks B12 absorption, sometimes reducing levels by 30% or more in long-term users. That deficiency doesn't announce itself dramatically. It creeps in slowly, months, years, and the whole time, your myelin is deteriorating. But here's what makes this even more serious. And this is the part about vitamin combinations that most people never hear. Calcium. High-dose calcium supplements, the kind millions of people take for bone health, compete directly with B12 absorption in the gut. They use overlapping transport mechanisms. So, if you're taking calcium and B12 at the same time, you are quite literally reducing how much of that critical B12 actually reaches your bloodstream. You might be taking the right vitamin in the right form, and still ending up deficient because of what you're pairing it with. I've seen this destroy people's nerve health for years, and it didn't have to happen. And this is where the research gets really surprising. Vitamin D, which genuinely does support nerve function and reduce neural inflammation, has its own interaction issue when it comes to your nerve health protocol. High-dose vitamin D accelerates calcium absorption. So if you're taking D3 with calcium, you're amplifying that calcium load and further compressing the window in which B12 can be absorbed efficiently. Each piece of this, on its own, seems reasonable. D3 and calcium together for bone health, B12 for energy and nerve support. But when you put them all together at the same time, you've created a biochemical traffic jam, and your nerves are caught in the middle of it. Researchers studying peripheral neuropathy have increasingly focused on what they call the nutrient interaction cascade, the way certain vitamins and minerals compete, block, or require each other for proper absorption and activation. What the data consistently shows is that the timing and form of supplementation matters as much as the dose. A 2019 analysis published in findings from multiple European clinical centers found that patients who separated their B12 supplementation from calcium-containing supplements by at least 4 hours showed measurably better nerve conduction scores over time compared to those taking everything simultaneously. The research on this is clear, but it rarely reaches the people who need it most. I had a patient, I'll call him Harold, 71 years old, came to me after 3 years of worsening neuropathy in both feet. He'd been to 2 neurologists. He was on gabapentin, which was making him foggy and unsteady. He was also faithfully taking his B12, his D3, and his calcium every morning with breakfast, all at once, every single day. He was genuinely trying to manage this, but his nerve symptoms had gotten progressively worse every 6 months without exception. When I looked at his supplement routine, the problem was immediately apparent. We made 2 changes. We switched his B12 to methylcobalamin, and we separated it from his calcium by several hours. Within 3 months, Harold told me something I've heard from patients many times after making these corrections. The burning at night had become noticeably less severe. Not gone, but less. Enough that he was sleeping through the night for the first time in over a year. That's what the right support, timed correctly, can begin to do. If what I'm sharing today is new to you, and I suspect it is, make sure you subscribe to this channel. I release critical health information for people over 60 every week. Information your doctor may not have time to share in a routine appointment. Hit the subscribe button below. It costs nothing, and it could be one of the most important health decisions you make today. I want to talk about what this ongoing nerve suffering actually costs you, beyond the physical symptoms, because I think this is something that doesn't get acknowledged enough. When your feet burn every night, you don't just lose sleep, you lose the ability to think clearly the next day. You lose patience with the people you love. You lose the energy to participate in your own life. I've watched patients stop going to church because they're afraid of stumbling in the parking lot. Stop attending their grandchildren's events because they can't stand for more than 20 minutes without the pain becoming unbearable. Stop dancing, something they did for 40 years, because they don't trust their own feet anymore. This isn't just a physical problem. It reaches into your identity, your sense of who you are. The person who was active, independent, capable. And the sleep piece, I cannot overstate this. Your nervous system does its most important repair work while you sleep. That's when the cellular regeneration processes that support myelin maintenance are most active. When nerve pain disrupts your sleep night after night, you're not just suffering from fatigue. You're interrupting the very process your body needs to begin recovering. The burning keeps you awake. Being kept awake prevents the repair. And the deterioration continues. It's a cycle that feeds itself. And it's exactly why getting the nutritional support right, the right forms, the right timing, the right combinations, matters so much more than simply taking more supplements. There's also the emotional weight of feeling like your body is failing you in ways that are invisible to everyone else. You look fine. People don't see what happens at 2 in the morning. They don't see you sitting on the edge of the bed, waiting for the burning to subside enough to lie back down. They don't see you gripping the handrail on the stairs with more force than you used to need. That private suffering, carried quietly, not wanting to worry your family, not wanting to seem like you're complaining, takes a real psychological toll. The frustration of trying things that don't work. The fear that this is simply how it's going to be from now on. The grief of activities you've already lost. I've put together a short presentation that goes much deeper into everything I've covered today. It includes specific approaches that I've seen work for patients in exactly this situation. The link is in the description below. Watch it when you have a quiet moment. I think it's going to answer a lot of questions you didn't even know you had. Now let me tell you what the research increasingly supports when it comes to giving your peripheral nervous system the right foundation. The first and most important compound is methylcobalamin, the active methylated form of B12. This is not the cyanocobalamin you find in most cheap supplements. Cyanocobalamin must be converted by your body before it can be used in nerve tissue. And that conversion becomes less efficient as you age. Methylcobalamin is already in the bioactive form. It crosses directly into nerve cells. Studies examining its role in myelin synthesis have consistently shown that it supports the structural integrity of nerve fibers in ways that standard B12 simply cannot replicate at the same dosage. In clinical practice, this distinction matters enormously. I have seen patients who were taking B12 for years and still deficient, simply because they were taking the wrong form. The second compound the research consistently highlights is alpha-lipoic acid. What makes this antioxidant unique is that it is both fat-soluble and water-soluble, which means it can penetrate into nerve cell membranes and into the fluid surrounding nerve tissue. Most antioxidants can only reach one or the other. Alpha-lipoic acid reaches both. It works specifically inside the mitochondria of nerve cells, neutralizing the oxidative damage that accumulates over decades of exposure to elevated blood sugar, inflammation, and metabolic stress. Researchers studying diabetic neuropathy have found it to be one of the most studied natural compounds for peripheral nerve support, with decades of clinical investigation across European medical centers. For people whose nerve damage has been driven by glucose-related oxidative stress, even if they haven't been formally diagnosed as diabetic, this is particularly relevant. Third on the list is benfotiamine, the fat-soluble form of vitamin B1. Standard thiamine, the form in most B-complex supplements, is water-soluble and does not penetrate nerve tissue effectively. Benfotiamine crosses cell membranes and reaches the interior of nerve cells at concentrations that standard thiamine cannot match. It has been studied specifically for its ability to protect nerves from glucose-related damage, blocking a pathway called the hexosamine pathway that converts excess sugar into compounds that damage the walls of the tiny blood vessels feeding your nerves. In clinical settings across Europe, it has been investigated for decades as a targeted nerve protective agent. Most people have never heard of it. Most supplements don't include it, but the research on its role in nerve health is substantial. And then there is magnesium, specifically in forms like glycinate or malate, that are absorbed without competing with calcium transport. Magnesium is involved in the regulation of nerve signal transmission at the cellular level. It manages the calcium channels on nerve cell membranes, acting as a natural brake on what researchers call neural hyperexcitability, the state in which nerves fire too easily, too frequently, generating that constant background of tingling and burning. Most people over 60 are chronically deficient in magnesium. Processed foods don't contain it. Many common medications deplete it. And without adequate magnesium, nerve cells remain in a state of overstimulation that no amount of B12 or alpha-lipoic acid can fully counteract. Now, the reason your doctor hasn't walked you through any of this in a 15-minute appointment is not because they don't care. The system they work within is built around pharmaceutical interventions, drugs that require prescriptions, that generate billing codes, that fit into the structure of how modern medicine operates. Nutritional biochemistry, the timing of supplement absorption, the differences between molecular forms of vitamins, the interaction between calcium and B12 transport, that's not in the standard curriculum. It's not covered in the 10-minute follow-up. It's not on the poster in the waiting room. This isn't a conspiracy. It's a system problem. And the result is that millions of people over 60 are suffering from something that is, at least in part, addressable, and they don't know it. You are not powerless here. What you now understand about B12 forms, about calcium timing, about the specific compounds your nerve cells actually need, most people your age will never learn this. The next time you reach for your morning supplements, I want you to remember what I shared today. Because now you understand what's actually happening when those three vitamins conflict with each other. And you understand what your nerves actually need to begin receiving the support they've been missing. Your peripheral nervous system has a remarkable capacity to respond when given the right compounds, in the right forms, at the right times. What I've seen in clinical practice over and over is that the burning at night often begins to ease. The tingling starts to quiet. The confidence in your step, that sense of trusting your own body again, begins to return. It doesn't happen overnight, but it begins. And beginning is everything. If today's video opened your eyes to something important, share it with someone you care about, because there are millions of people over 60 dealing with this silently, and they don't have to. The short presentation in the description goes even deeper. I highly recommend watching it when you have a quiet moment. Subscribe for more critical health information every week. And leave a comment below. What was the most surprising thing you learned today? I read every single one.